started. Basically, to your question, and your question, kind of to summarize everything, is to what extent, can heresy be found in a papal encyclical, or can heresy be found in this, or can heresy be found in that? So you have to understand is there's kind of two propositions when we say that papal teaching is safe. So papal teaching is safe can be taken in two ways. Okay. So papal teaching is safe in se, so in itself, versus papal teaching is safe quod nos, so according to us. So you have to be very clear what you mean right here when you say papal teaching is safe, because really there's going to be agreement on this second point. I'm pretty sure that it would actually be a condemned proposition to deny the second point, that papal teaching is safe quod nos. So if, let's say, we pretend that Pope Francis could teach a grave error, and people assent to that teaching on the basis of their religious duties of, the teaching of Pope Francis, the religious duties of accepting that teaching, well, then obviously they're not going to be held liable or culpable for that error in which they've fallen into, because they're merely assenting to it under the aspect of holding to a certain authority. So it'd be like, for example, if you had a letter that you thought was from the Pope and ends up being a forged letter, and you assent to what that letter says because as if it was from the Pope, that would be a meritorious act right there of the virtue of obedience, even though technically speaking in itself, it didn't have any authority to command your obedience. It's just you exercise the virtue through your own sort of perspective or subjective apprehension. So really what we mean here is papal teaching is safe in se. So papal teaching is safe in itself. And sometimes you'll get the language of, for this, objective safety. And sometimes you'll get the language for this of subjective safety. So really, subjective safety, everybody should hold on to it. If somebody doesn't hold on to objective safety, so everyone holds to this. Somebody doesn't believe in subjective safety, you can just laugh in their faces and tell them they're stupid, because they're stupid. Like that's all that I can say. Okay, now bringing down this, so papal teaching is safe in se. So this is usually what people are asking when it comes to, question of what does it mean for there to be infallible safety? Like this is the question that's being asked. So obviously there's going to be two things that we need to consider. So first, which papal teaching? And second, how safe? So we're asking about the subject here, papal teaching, in the first question. We're asking about the predicate here, safe, in the second question. So which papal teaching and how safe? So when it comes to which papal teaching, obviously the Pope can teach in a number of ways. I mean, you can think about it. The Pope can teach in an ex cathedra definition. The Pope can teach in an encyclical. The Pope can teach in apostolic constitution. The Pope can teach through a dicastery. The Pope can teach in a papal homily. The Pope can teach in his capacities as a private theologian. The Pope can teach in his official capacities, but like writing a private letter. So not meant for the whole church, but meant for a certain individual. The Pope can teach in a local area. There's dozens of different options that we could bring up here for which papal teaching. So just give a few examples. Homily, local exhortation, ex cathedra definition, which papal teaching when we say X is safe in itself. There's a lot of different options that we could bring up. And then, so from here, obviously everybody's going to agree, ex cathedra teaching, that can't contain error. But, if you talk to people and you kind of press them and say, hey, could a homily contain error? Could like a papal homily, could a papal interview, could like a papal book, could a papal private letter to somebody or a message to a local bishop's conference, could these contain error? I think a lot of people would kind of start questioning themselves of, okay, maybe they could. So there's really a lot of levels that we can talk about here. And then second, how safe. So how safe is going to be, in order to explain this, there's something called theological censures. So most people know the censure of heresy. Actually, I'll put it down here. Most people know about the censure of heresy. It's usually what people are asking, can a papal encyclical contain heresy? Can a papal homily contain heresy? Can a private letter contain heresy? Can an exhortation to a bishop's conference contain heresy? This is usually what they're asking about heresy. But, heresy is not the only theological censure when we say safe. So not only heresy, but we can have what's called an error in theology. That's a certain censure. We can have an error in Catholic doctrine. That's another censure. We can have temerarious, which, am I going to spell that right? Temerarious. Oh gosh, I didn't spell that right at all. So we have a note called temerarious. That's another one. So or simply less probable. That's another error. Less probable. You can think of what's called bad sounding. It just sounds bad, but technically there's nothing intrinsically wrong about it. There's actually a lot of different censures that we could bring to a papal teaching. So from this, you can obviously see, if we're asking about a homily, we say, can a homily contain error? Is a homily safe? Well, can a homily contain heresy? Can a homily contain an error in theology? Can it contain something that's temerarious? Can it contain something that's less probable? Can it contain something that's bad sounding? Or, an encyclical, or we can ask the same question about an apostolic constitution. So really, there's quite literally hundreds of different positions that one could take on this problem. There's multiple different theses that could be set. There's multiple different questions that could be asked. And really, for I myself, I absolutely do not feel anywhere near qualified to answer the question of, can, a papal homily contain something that's temerarious? Or, can a message to a local bishop's conference, can that contain something that's less probable? Or, can a private letter contain something that's bad sounding? So you'll have really people online. I think we know kind of who we're talking about. Who will say, if you deny infallible safety, you go against the teaching of the church. We'll say things like that. Well, yeah, of course, I think everybody should hold to a general charism of safety that occurs to when it comes to non-definitive papal teachings. The question is, where does it extend? I mean, does it extend to taking away less probable opinions from homilies? Does it extend to temerarious statements in papal encyclicals? Does it extend to errors in Catholic doctrine in a DDF document that's signed on by the Pope? I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. And really, I don't think anybody's getting that deep and kind of thinking through in this way because we don't really think in terms of theological censures much. So I think it ends up being kind of just a flat judgment on this matter, but it's extremely, extremely complicated if you actually get down to it. Okay. So, yeah, you're the worst streamer of all time. So I hope that helped for anybody who actually cares about this problem because I know it's kind of a hot button issue. Yeah. So the only thing we know for sure is that the extraordinary magisterium is safe from heresy, right? Mr. Richard African. Yes, actually. Um, we know it's such a difficult. I mean, like if you were saying like with absolute certainty and absolute clarity, but I think sort of we have to hold to a sort of general charism of safety when it comes to non-definitive teachings. So you know how does one kind of parse that out? Like, does that mean that there's no heresy ever? Could be. I know people will bring up historical examples that seem to contradict this. Doesn't mean no heresy and encyclicals. I think that would be like a reasonable thing to say. Like, no, a pope cannot teach non-definitively for the whole church heresy. I think that's reasonable. Like a papal homily, like, you know, what, how exactly would that look? You know, but yeah, I think once you get beyond the extraordinary magisterium being safe from heresy, or actually, the extraordinary magisterium is not only safe from heresy, it's safe from any theological censure, by the way. Once you start to get outside of the extraordinary magisterium being safe from theological censure, that's when, you know, that's when you just fall into a sort of multitude of questions that I feel very inadequate to answer.